We have here with us Professor Marvin Taylor, Wilde Scholar at New York University and co-editor of the book Reading Wilde. Mr. Taylor, tell us the thing you find most interesting about the trials.
Well, to me, the most fascinating thing about the trial is, there was a whole nexus of issues that are on trial with Oscar Wilde, having to do with the roles of art, of homosexuality, of effeminacy, of the Irish in England, of class. So it's not so much that Wilde was on trial for sodomy. That's not the major point in all this. Now, I truly believe that the sodomy charges are less important. Wilde was on trial for his subversive beliefs in art and morality and Victorian society. You see, Wilde was an aesthete, that is, an artist who argues strenuously for an aesthetic approach, and he bases this in Hellenism and its long tradition of art for art's sake. Now, his project was about art and the power of art to transform man. Yes, power of art to transform man.
Do you think he was successful?
Oh, well, as long as he is able to control the discourse, then he is incredibly successful.
But what happens in the trial?
Well, in the trial, he runs up against a legal discourse, and I would even say a legal medical discourse, and he begins to lose in the face of this patriarchal legal discourse that portrays him more as a homosexual than as someone who desires men.
Are you saying that Wilde really didn't think of himself as homosexual?
Did he think of himself as a kind of person? Now, this is also what I find fascinating about the Wilde trials, because it's not until after the Wilde trials that people begin to identify themselves as a specific type of person based on their attraction to members of the same sex. You see, it in effect created the modern homosexual as a social subject. Now, whether Wilde considered himself to be this type of person, well, there's nothing in Greek or Latin literature that leads me to believe that the Greeks or Romans considered themselves to be homosexual. So there's nothing necessarily that would have caused Wilde to construct his identity as a homosexual. Now, I'm not convinced of this. I think it's more complicated. Foucault actually talks about how it was impossible for men of the Victorian era to think of themselves as gay or homosexual because that construction simply didn't exist.
Which leads me to my next question. Why isn't Wilde telling the truth about his desire for men?
Oh, Moises, now this is the thing. His project is less about sodomy than it is about art and aestheticism. Now, Wilde is less interested in admitting that he had sex with men than he is about expressing his intellectual ideals and beliefs. Though it is that he did have sex with men, and he did, and even promoted it in his art. Now, did he lie?
Yes.
See, in this regard, I don't think that he lied. I mean, most of us would think that he did, or we're projecting. Now, for myself, I worry that we project too much that Oscar was lying, and we now raise an ethical question,
Which is
was it wrong for Oscar to be on the stand and admit that he thought Dorian Gray was a beautiful personality? Now, to him, Dorian was a personality, and that was what he was attracted to.
what do you think is the answer?
Well, am I to judge him on his own standards, or by the standards of the courtroom, or by the standards of later gay liberationists who take him up as a model, but inevitably are unsatisfied because he represents something different?
So, he lied.
Well, yes, he did lie, and I'm not bothered. Now, I'm on very slippery moral ground here. Ethically, it doesn't bother me that he lied, because they, the court, were trying to fix homosexuality and to contain the disruption that Wilde represented, and this was a disruption of gender, of class, of sexuality, and they were successful. But, of course, by this time, he had already released these ideas into Western culture that, are still there.